Hello, today I'm going to show you the basic stuff that I do to every image before I give it to a client. So here's an image I gave to a client, but it actually came from this. So I'm going to show you how to go from this to this in either Lightroom or Photoshop. They both really work the same, and I'll show you the settings you can change in either or. So let's start with the image in Photoshop. So here it is. I'm going to actually close it out first though and open it. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to open it in RAW mode. So I'm going to find the image. Here it is. Open it up, and this is the way it looked like in the camera. At the time I took the picture and I didn't really realize it was so underexposed, but because I recorded in RAW mode that I'm able to change it and it'll still look great. So first thing I'm going to do, which I do with all my pictures first, is change the exposure. So I'm going to bump this up to where I think it should be. Alright, now I don't want to go too high because then you just blow things out. That's when whites get so white that you can't see any details in them. So make sure you don't go too crazy with that. So I'm going to bring it back to around 2. I tend to overexpose my stuff a little bit, so like right there is where I would want it. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is temperature. That's basically making things look more blue or warmer and orange. I tend to like things a little bit warmer than most, so somewhere in there looks just fine to me. You can also mess with tint. If it seems too green or purple, you can change that as well, but really the way it was just fine with me. Now you can do auto and see what it comes up with, but to me that's not even close. So you want to change it to custom and change it the way you would want it. Okay. Alright, that looks pretty good. Maybe a little more exposed. I'm going to jump over here right now. I only care about some things in the picture because I'm going to crop it differently. So I'm going to go up to my crop tool right up here, or you can press C, and I'm going to scroll this down. Now when I do this, I'm going to hold down Shift though, so that way my aspect ratio stays the same as I do it. But I'm going to crop it something like this. I'm trying to use the rule of thirds here. Focus point should be here, more empty room over here, and I can chop the head off just a little bit. That's okay to do. Just don't want to chop the chin. Okay. That looks pretty good, and if I just hit enter, it'll show me it like that. Maybe that was too much. I can go back to crop though and just kind of move this over a bit. There, that's perfect. Love it. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my basic settings over here. Now the highlights are a little bright over here, so I'm gonna bring some of those highlights down, and you can just kind of look at the white areas and see what that's doing. I'm going to bring my highlights down. I'm also going to bring my shadows. She's brunette. She doesn't have gray hair, so I'm going to bring some of those shadows down a little bit. And this will make it more contrasty without actually changing the contrast. Whites, you know, I'm going to leave those up. You can bring them down. You just want to really always pay attention to skin tones. As long as you get that right, the client's not going to care as much. That's where they focus on. I can bring down blacks. You can see basically the hair and the eyes get really dark, but I don't want to bring our eyes down too much. So I'm going to bring down blacks some, but I don't want to go crazy with this. So that looks pretty good. We'll fix the eyes in a little bit. Clarity. What this does is basically creates contrast between colors, and it makes things look sharper. Like I can see individual hairs and things like that. But the downside is it's not very flattering against skin. So what you'll want to do is probably take this down if it's an up-close picture. And I'll show you how to use clarity in a different way though in a minute. Alright, vibrance, basically how colorful do you want it to be? Do you want it really vibrant? This looks cool in a way, but the skin again is too colorful. They'll not like that. They get to look fake. So you could turn up vibrance a little bit. And it really depends on your subject. If they have a lot of acne or something like that, you're not going to want to do it as much. So that looks pretty good. Now let's do a couple things here. So before I move on, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. And you can zoom in using this right here. I'm gonna go to 100%. This is called going 1-to-1, and basically I'm looking at pixel by pixel. You can see individual pixels now if you're 100%. Okay, I'm gonna start using my adjustment brush, and basically I can do some of those same effects with using just this brush. So one thing I want to show you is maybe how to get the eyes to brighten up a little bit since we turned them down some. So I'm going to turn up the clarity, alright, and I'm going to turn up saturation, and I'm also going to turn up exposure a little bit. And I can just kind of color around the eyes here, alright, and it just makes them a little more punchy. Now you probably don't see a huge difference. If I turn up the exposure, you'll see it though. So you don't want to go crazy with it, but if you just want to kind of get it to where you want, she has these hazel eyes, so maybe I'd turn up the saturation a little more to show that. And again, like you can see that, so that looks pretty good right there. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so to get out of this mode right here, I can just click back on the hand or zoom out. And maybe that's a little too much. So if I'm like, you know what, that's a little creepy. So I could click on this and then maybe back down the, you just want to click on it right there first, and maybe back down that exposure just a bit. So somewhere right in there looks just fine though. All right, next thing I want to do is actually increase the clarity for the hair. That's a great place to do more clarity, is not on the skin. So I'm going to go back to that brush there, and I'm going to change this stuff. So you can see when I change this stuff now, it's not changing the last one. I'm on new, so it's gonna be a separate brush. So I'm not going to change the exposure necessarily, but I do want to pump up my clarity and not change the saturation for this, what I'm about to do. So I can change my brush size. It's kind of small right now, but I can just up this a little ways, and that looks pretty good. Now if you watch the hair, basically I'm adding clarity to the hair. It really makes the hair really stand out, a little more punchy and stuff like that. And you can adjust this and see what it looks like with or without it. Now this is like it just looks flat and mushy. So if you turn this up, you can see it's much more intense. It shows a lot more sharpness. So somewhere like that looks good. You can also do it like in the arms and stuff like that, or other details in the background. But this really isn't the photo for it, so we're not going to mess with it any more than that. Okay, good. We're done with our brushes. So now I'm going to go back to the hand here so I can get back to my basic stuff. I'm good here. So the next thing I'm going to look at is sharpening. So if I go to 100%, I want to get nice and close so I can see it. And right now it's a pretty sharp picture, even though it was low exposure. So I'm going to turn up the sharpening a little bit more, but don't go crazy with it. When you start to see individual pores and things like that, or details you don't really want to see, then don't go any higher. So I'm going to go somewhere around 30. But now I'm also starting to see more grain. All right, so what I'm going to do is come into here to noise reduction. I was at ISO 400, so I shouldn't have to raise this up much, but I'm going to bump this up. And if you go real high, what happens though is they start to look like plasticky. See, here's low, grainy, top, plasticky. So you want to find a good middle ground, all right? So I'm going to go probably somewhere around 30 and call that good. She has relatively great skin, so if they have some acne or other problems like that, then you could really up the luminance of the noise reduction, and you'd really take care of a lot of that. All right, that looks cool. Again, we're not trying to make things look fake. We're just trying to give the client what they want. All right, let's now go to hue and saturation and luminance, HSL, grayscale. I'm going to zoom out for a second so you can see. Here's the whole image, right? Now, you can actually just change certain things in here. So like the saturation, I had the green already turned up. If I look at hue, I can take just individual colors. Like if I take orange, that is their skin tones, right? So like if you just want to change the skin tones, you would change it there. So that's not something I really want to mess with unless they had a bad spray tan. All right, so I'm going to take the greens here. I like this to be a little more green right here as well. So I'm going to up the green some, and you can see how much greener it gets compared to yellow. So I'm taking the yellow, turning it more green. I can also go to the saturation of green. I can turn it up to there, and I can also go to luminance and make the greens darker or brighter. Okay, so you can kind of mess with that, get whatever feel you would like. I like the green against the fleshy red skin, so that looks good. All right, and last thing I'm going to show you is vignetting. To make it really pop, I really like to turn up vignetting. That's a personal thing. You can go white, but that's kind of 80s. So I would drop this down, and you don't want to go crazy with it. It's really dark on her shoulder right here, but you know, somewhere around like -20 something, it looks pretty good. So without, it's without, and that's with. And it really just makes the subject stand out from the background a little more. I do this with almost all my photos. It's just a personal preference. You don't have to do it. Okay, looks pretty good. So now I'm going to go to Open Image. And now once it's in Photoshop, you could do this in Lightroom using the spot removal tool. And I could have done it just a second as well in raw mode that I was just in. But I'm going to do it right here instead. So here's the spot healing brush. And what I can do with that is I can go in here and just basically grab any hair that isn't there. Again, we're not trying to make it look fat or like trying to make someone look skinny and they're not. We're just trying to, you know, fix little things that they wouldn't want in the photo. So just kind of grab some of that stuff. That looks good. Basically, I'm going to take these hairs, though, the ones that are just really noticeable. You're not going to chase every hair. You'll go nuts, and it'll end up looking kind of fake and stuff like that. So just don't worry too much about it. Just try to get all the little hairs out. That looks good. I'm not even going to mess with these. I think they look just fine. Sometimes you see like little hairs show up, though, and you can just kind of go over it twice if you need to. Just be careful that it's not creating lines on their face, but that looks pretty good there. And if you notice like a little imperfection, I don't know if this is a mole or not, but you can kind of just take those little areas up too. You don't want to actually take, if you know it's a mole, don't remove it. That's part of them. I wouldn't suggest that. Okay. All right, so I can zoom out, and there's the final image. If I want to say this is a JPEG, I'm just going to do save as and then drop this down to JPEG. So looks pretty good. And in the next video, if you'd like to see, I'm going to work on creating punchy sports photos. So check that out if you want to see how to make things look really pop. All right. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.